Little bit.
Welcome back to Little Bits of Language. Today we have a fun animated read aloud of a story in English. If you prefer lower sensory input or a bedtime read, we have a softer version available on our channel. Our read alouds are done by Aisha and I, co-founders of Little Bits of Language and fellow speech language pathologists. We love bringing our childhood language development expertise to you, one little bit at a time. Some little bits we'd like to share with you today are some reading tips to think about while you're listening to and watching this read aloud. You can also use some of these tips after the fact. The first one is to use WH questions. Again, you can use this during the story and ask, who is that? Where are they going? What are they doing? And you can ask those questions after the story as well. This will really help seal in details and information about the story. The second is to pause when needed, whether you're pausing the video here to wait before you go on to the next part of the story. If you're reading an actual book and you're just taking the time to process, hey, what's going on? Let's kind of rehash what's been going on in the story before moving on. Use pauses generously as much as you need them. The third thing is to relate the story to a child's real life as much as possible. Maybe you're reading a story about a character going to the park and you all just went the day before and you can talk about that. Oh, remember we did this yesterday too. We saw some of these things as well. Maybe there's slides and a swing and things like that. So that's important to relate to their own life. And the last big tip that we have for this one is to retell when you can. Maybe you're going to, in those pauses, you might retell something that just occurred, or you might read through the whole story and allow an opportunity to retell after the fact by flipping through the pages and just letting the child point and talk about the story. This will be really important to, again, seal in any of those details you've already talked about, review and think about the story events that took place, and that starts to help them form their own narratives and how to structure stories in the future. So make sure you use these tips as needed. We leave them there just as something to think about and then remind you of, but you're certainly welcome to do any of those at any time that they feel right, and as much as you need to. So now let's get into today's story. Corduroy. Story and pictures by Don Freeman. Corduroy is a bear who once lived in the toy department of a big store. Day after day, he waited with all the other animals and dolls for somebody to come along and take him home. The store was always filled with shoppers buying all sorts of things, but no one ever seemed to want a small bear in green overalls. Then one morning, a little girl stopped and looked straight into Corduroy's bright eyes. "Oh, Mommy," she said, "look, there's the very bear I've always wanted." "Not today, dear," her mother sighed. "I've spent too much already. Besides, he doesn't look new. He's lost the button to one of his shoulder straps." Corduroy watched them sadly as they walked away. "I didn't know I'd lost a button," he said to himself. "Tonight, I'll go and see if I can find it." Late that evening, when all the shoppers had gone and the doors were shut and locked, Corduroy climbed carefully down from his shelf and began searching everywhere on the floor for his lost button. Suddenly, he felt the floor moving under him. Quite by accident, he had stepped onto an escalator, and up he went. "Could this be a mountain?" he wondered. "I think I've always wanted to climb a mountain." He stepped off the escalator as it reached the next floor, and there, before his eyes, was a most amazing sight. Tables and chairs and lamps and sofas and rows of beds. "This must be a palace," Corduroy gasped. "I guess I've always wanted to live in a palace." He wandered around admiring the furniture. "This must be a bed," he said. "I've always wanted to sleep in a bed." And up he crawled onto a large, thick mattress. All at once he saw something small and round. "Why, here's my button!" he cried, and he tried to pick it up. But like all the other buttons on the mattress, it was tied down tight. He yanked and pulled with both paws until pop! Off came the button, and off the mattress Corduroy toppled. Bang! Into a tall floor lamp. Over it fell with a crash. Corduroy didn't know it, but there was someone else awake in the store. The night watchman was going his rounds on the floor above. When he heard the crash, he came dashing down the escalator. "Now who in the world did that?" he exclaimed. "Somebody must be hiding around here." He flashed his light under and over sofas and beds until he came to the biggest bed of all. And there he saw 2 fuzzy brown ears sticking up from under the cover. "Hello," he said. "How did you get upstairs?" The watchman tucked Corduroy under his arm and carried him down the escalator and set him on the shelf in the toy department with the other animals and dolls. Corduroy was just waking up when the first customers came into the store in the morning, and there, looking at him with a wide, warm smile, was the same little girl he'd seen only the day before. "I'm Lisa," she said, "and you're going to be my very own bear. Last night, I counted what I've saved in my piggy bank, and my mother said I could bring you home." "Shall I put him in a box for you?" the saleslady asked. "Oh, no thank you," Lisa answered, and she carried Corduroy home in her arms. She ran all the way up 4 flights of stairs, into her family's apartment, and straight to her room. Corduroy blinked. There was a chair and a chest of drawers, and alongside a girl-sized bed stood a little bed, just the right size for him. The room was small, nothing like that enormous palace in the department store. "This must be home," he said. "I know I've always wanted a home." Lisa sat down with Corduroy on her lap and began to sew a button on his overalls. "I like you the way you are," she said, "but you'll be more comfortable with your shoulder strap fastened." "You must be a friend," said Corduroy. "I've always wanted a friend." "Me too," said Lisa, and gave him a big hug. The end. What a great story, right? Now let's see how much everybody was paying attention. We're going to be putting up some questions that we as speech therapists use to check for understanding of the story. These questions can also be asked during the story, and you're welcome to do that when you watch the next Read Aloud, or if you want to stay tuned just after these questions show, there's going to be an opportunity to tell the story in your own words with a silent retell video. Now let's get into those questions. Good luck! Thank you so much for listening to today's story. Remember to like and subscribe to stay connected with us. We'll continue to post more videos with story read-alouds, recommended toys for kids, speech therapy questions, and any topics or videos requested by you, our audience. Also, remember to check out our social media pages and our website, littlebitsoflanguage.com, for more content. See you soon.
Little bit.